It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
On a Monday. Thank you, Chad Erickson. Good to have you with us over the next 60 minutes. Lots of NFL on a Monday, where week 2 will conclude with Monday Night Football. Obviously, some college football to talk about as well. Bill Bender will drop by in about 20 minutes. Does a great job over at the Sporting News. Now a weekly hit with us every Monday here on SportsWrap. But let's jump right into it, Sam Yarnell. Week 2 in the NFL. And boy, who had the Saints being world beaters as we get through week 2 of the NFL season. Certainly something we all have to take notice of right now in the way they are playing, Sam Yarnell. Certainly have to be impressed with what Derek Carr and this Saints team have been able to do. They go into Dallas, rough up a Cowboys team in a big way. I guess it wasn't an aberration what we saw in week 1 against Carolina.
Listen, Alvin Kamara is establishing himself as the guy in the NFL this year, and if Christian McCaffrey is going to miss significant time, you're looking at Alvin Kamara taking over that role as the best running back in football, hands down. A 4-touchdown performance, 3 rushing for the Saints running back is just the best thing that fantasy investors in Alvin Kamara wanted to see come out of this season and early in this season. And on the Cowboys side of things, Jason, this is an average football team. I think Dan Orlovsky put it best, and he's been saying it for months, as far as back as I can remember in watching hits that he's done. He's right. The Cowboys are just an average football team. They're Jat. You know, we talk about Jags, just another guy. They're Jat. They're just another team. They'll get all the media attention because
Sam, let me just stop you real quick. They didn't do anything to improve themselves from last year. They're the same football team that walked off the field last year, essentially.
They are not unlike the 49ers, who we'll get to in a minute, in that they had to scratch and claw their way around the cap just to bring back the same players they had last season. Okay, sure, you bring in Ezekiel Elliott, which at this point in his career, I don't think is moving the needle on any team, even the worst team right now. So you're right. And at the end of the day, we expected Dak Prescott to take another step forward this year, just like I don't know why I'm saying we, because I don't include myself in this, but there was an expected step forward that Dak Prescott would take this year, which seemingly everyone's been expecting him to take every next year since he entered the NFL. So it really doesn't make sense why we continue this narrative about Dak just because his owner likes him a lot. The Cowboys are a mess, Jason. Yeah. I don't know what they're going to do.
The biggest winner from what we saw on Sunday is the Eagles without even being on the field, because you look at that division now with obviously the Giants, with the Commanders, with the Cowboys, and if you're the Eagles, you're like, wow, we just need to not screw this up. Let's talk about the Bengals and the Chiefs, because it was another great game between these two teams, obviously. Kansas City, again, finding ways to win. And I remember having this conversation with Matt Verderam before the season started. If they got through their early stretch, there was a chance they were going to be able to put up a gaudy win total. Beat Baltimore, beat Cincinnati now. Bengals 0-2 for like the 5th year in a row. The late pass interference call, which is legit. It is pass interference. You have to make that call in that spot. They got conservative. The one thing I'll note about the Chiefs late in that game, though, they get that PI call. And then all of a sudden, they got super conservative and were willing to have hair. And I know 50-yard field goals aren't what they used to be. They're a lot easier for these guys who have bionic foots and the evolution of the kicker. We saw it last night, even in the Texans-Bears games with all the kicks over 50 yards. Kymie Fairbairn could have hit one from 75 last night. But they got awful conservative late in that game and were willing to just say, Harrison Butker, 52 yards, go get it. Still, tough loss for the Bengals. Another good win for the Chiefs, who just keep finding ways to win football games.
This was a very interesting game from multiple perspectives. Well, I'll start with the officiating thing, because, Jason, you're exactly right. That pass interference call late in the game was totally pass interference, like the most by the book you could get. And then I thought it was very interesting that the internet took to calling that the most controversial call after the game. When if you go back and watch, there are like, I want to say 5 calls in the 2 drives leading up to that just go blatantly the Chiefs' way that no one ever talked about. So I didn't understand that internet narrative. I thought it was very tired the kind of moment it started. What I will say is this, to the conservative part about how the Chiefs got late in that game, Lou Anarumo continues to own the Kansas City Chiefs offense. As a defensive coordinator, he is seemingly the only person in the NFL that season in and season out can have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes completely befuddled on a football field.
But they can't win. They can't win. I mean,
that's not the defensive coordinator's fault necessarily that the offense can't score late in a game and they score, 3 points in the fourth quarter? You can't hold that against the defensive coordinator when he holds the opposing team to
my point is the Chiefs
16 points in the second half.
My point is the Chiefs just keep doing enough.
You're right. And I think that the fact that he is the only guy in the NFL who, like I said, we're seeing capable of that speaks a lot to the greatness of the Chiefs dynasty. All of that said, if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs after this game, my main takeaway is I do not want to face the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs, because if there is one thing that they proved that they could do in that game, it's that even when they don't have their full complement of weapons, and the Chiefs do, they can still lead for and hang neck and neck with the entirety of the game. Yeah. It's a good win for the Chiefs. It was a very good game. But if the Bengals get T. Higgins back in the postseason and have a relatively healthy rest of the, 17 weeks until we get there, I might take the Bengals in a rematch in the playoffs.
Tough division, man. You put yourself behind the 8 ball. I don't think 0-2 through week 2 is, again, I think we've gotten to a point where I think we could have a nuanced enough conversation about teams that are able to recover from 0-2 starts. But that being said, you'd much rather be in Pittsburgh's position than you would the Bengals or the Ravens at this point. I mean, Mike Tomlin's got to be feeling pretty good about himself. All right, there are more games we want to highlight from week 2, and we'll do that coming up here in just a couple of minutes. We will also be joined by Bill Bender coming up in about 10 minutes as well. Get some thoughts with him. Florida State still hasn't won a football game, folks. Not kidding. We'll get to that as well. Lots more to do on a Monday Sports Wrap. A whole bunch of NFL. Don't go anywhere. Bill Bender talks college football in 10 minutes. We'll get some thoughts with him on week 3 of the college season. He does NFL too, so maybe we'll slip in an NFL question. All right, Sam Yarnell, running through our top games from week 2. Got to take a couple minutes and talk about the Lions. Look, I mean, they could just as easily be 0-2 as they could be 2-0. If you look at the first 2 games and sort of the way they played out. They obviously get the overtime win in week 1 against the Rams in the Sunday night football opener. But then yesterday, I mean, look, hats off to Tampa Bay. And there's somebody I want to talk about before we get done with this segment. But Baker Mayfield just continue to see this evolution and growth in what he does. And they are going to be a tough team to beat for anybody all year. I picked them to make the playoffs. I picked Atlanta to win the division. I don't know how that's going to play out. But I picked Tampa Bay to make the playoffs, and there was a reason. There isn't anything that this team really lost or slipped off from last year that would make you believe they couldn't still be a contender in the NFC, in an NFC that's kind of wide open.
It is an NFC that's wide open. Jason, the development of this team has been so interesting, right? Obviously, we all remember the Tom Brady days with the Buccaneers. And one of the masses that was concerned about the transition away. I don't remember who was the immediate quarterback that followed Tom Brady, because it wasn't Baker Mayfield. Was there a Kyle Trask in there or something? I can't remember.
No, I think it was Baker. I think it was Baker.
Was it? It was Baker immediately after Tom Brady?
Yeah, I think it was.
So that season with the Rams must have been, when Baker was with the Rams, must have been Tom Brady's last year.
Right.
Regardless, you're exactly right. The development of Baker Mayfield in this system has been something that you mentioned asking Bill Bender NFL questions. It would be interesting to get Bill Bender's thoughts on how Baker has transitioned from kind of what he was at Oklahoma through the journeyman part of his early career in the NFL to now with the Buccaneers having as much success as they have. I'd be interested to get his take on that in just a couple of minutes. But in terms of this game, I never thought in this new era of Detroit Lions football, Jason, it never felt like a team would out-grit the Detroit Lions. And in this game, especially in the fourth quarter of this game, it felt like the Buccaneers were out-gritting the Detroit Lions. So if the Buccaneers can transition to being that gritty football team and take that Lions identity, I'm with you. They could be the Lions of last year and find themselves playing all the way to the NFC Championship game.
Say this as well. I mean, look, Dan Campbell had the gaffe last year that I certainly think you can make the argument in the postseason against the Niners in terms of the way he managed that game. Yesterday, after the game, he took the blame for some of the game management decisions in this game. Once is an anomaly. Twice in a matter of just a few games starts to become a trend. Campbell has to watch the way he is managing these situations. Move to the Saints and Cowboys, because, I mean, we talked about what Derek Carr did, and obviously that was a big story from week 2 and what he's done over the first 2 weeks. The Raiders and Ravens is what I wanted to get to. My apologies there. Raiders and Ravens, I mean, now, Antonio Pierce, that team's going to play hard for him every week. Now you've got a Ravens team that's 0-2 and loses a game at home. There was one of these games last year or the year before where they lost one of these games at home where it just felt like they'd figure out a way to win it, and instead they figured out a way to lose it. Gardner Minshew, he's not gonna lose you games. He's going to keep you in games. And, hats off to the Raiders who get a win in week 2 or 1-1, coming back home for their opener in Las Vegas. And if you're the Ravens, you're kind of scratching your head, but they're in the right division. If you're going to be 0-2 in any division, it might as well be that. It might as well be that AFC North.
It's a great call, Jason. And yeah, the fourth quarter letdown in this game was insane to me. It was so un-Harbaugh-like, and I know that, the narrative around Lamar is that he can't ever finish it and he can't win the big one. And he's never been the guy to blow leads. Like, that's not the ilk that he comes from. If anything, he plays not up to par at the beginning, and by the time he's behind, he can't play well enough to get his team back ahead. So this was such an anomaly to me. This game didn't make sense. You're right about the Gardner Minshew thing, yet, Jason, watching this game, I kept thinking to myself, the Raiders offense still would, I think, be more prolific with Aiden O'Connell. It feels like they would be able to do more if they just gave the ball to Aiden O'Connell. Now, I'm not going to come on here and knock a guy after he wins against one of the best teams in football in Gardner Minshew, and he made some really good throws to Davante Adams, but I counted like 3 or 4 times where he just blatantly missed open receivers. And yeah, I get that happens at every level of football and even in the NFL. But when that happens with Aiden O'Connell instead of Gardner Minshew, it feels like it's more of a growing experience than, the career backup fill-in guy who we're finally giving a chance to. The Raiders franchise identity, even with this win, I still don't understand. And they've got to fight to keep Davante Adams in that locker room.
I'll tell you right now, the identity is what they do on defense. They're going to make it hard for teams to score. They're a good team defensively. That's what I'm saying.
Max Crosby is so underrated.
They're not going to get blown out of a lot of games. They're just not. They're going to be able to hang around and steal games like this one late. Real quick, we've only got 90 seconds, though. We got to get to Bill Bender. Boy, oh boy. that loss yesterday. I mean, look, maybe I was going to say this before. Sam Darnold might be the Baker Mayfield of this year. That might be kind of where we're headed right now. If you look at that Vikings story and what's developing there, Sam Darnold could wind up being the Baker Mayfield of this year. That journeyman that's kind of gone through it all, been through the ringer, played the backup role, was expected to be a prominent starter in New York with the Jets. And now all of a sudden you turn around and Sam Darnold's kind of lighting up the world.
So I got an interesting stat for you that you, Jason Page, are going to love. When Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold were in Carolina together, they combined for 22 touchdowns and 19 interceptions as Panthers. In both of their independent careers since leaving the Carolina Panthers, combined Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, 46 touchdowns, 14 interceptions.
It's real, man.
All it takes is leaving Carolina.
Bryce Young, hop on the first bus out of there, man. Blink twice if you need to be rescued, Bryce Young. Poor Bryce Young. You know, look, you can talk about how Bryce Young's played, by the way. They can't protect him. He's getting hit on every play. And by the way, the Bears better figure out the same with Caleb Williams, or it's going to be a really long year in Chicago and a short year for him. Let's take it to segment 3 on this Monday edition of Sports Wrap. Pretty much wall-to-wall on the NFL, with the exception of odds and ends that we'll get to later. Spend some time with our good friend Bill Bender, joining us now on Mondays here on the show. Oh, look, Sammy Arnell is here too. All right, so I want to talk some college football, but I gotta, you guys, maybe you can help me out with this. I'm having a problem since I moved to the West Coast, and it has become particularly prevalent on Sundays with the NFL. I can no longer get through an entire NFL Sunday. No. Listen, you guys got to hear me out on this, and maybe you could help me with it. When I wake up around 7 a.m. because that's my internal clock. I can't get up any later than 7 a.m. because we get up real early to do the TV show every day. But on Sundays, I get up at 7 a.m. By 2 p.m., like early in the late window, I have to take a nap. I wind up missing like the first half of all the 4 p.m. Eastern games because I can't stay awake from 7 a.m. until something's got to give. If you've got a solution for this, I'm all ears.
I'll tell you this. We go ahead, Samuel.
Well, I was just going to say, Jason, I feel like as much as you and I sit here 5 days a week and talk about the grind of professional athletes these days in sport, that sitting on the couch in front of a TV, locked in 7 hours of commercial-free football, that's our grind as members of the media. I don't know if you got to do some training or what, maybe some off-season workout programs, but we got to get locked in, man. It's week 3. We got 16 more weeks of this. Come on, get locked and loaded, because we're going to be doing this for months and months to come. There's no getting around it.
See, Bill, you're a little more my age. So maybe you've got a better suggestion for it than Sam does, who's just like, tough it out, rub some dirt on it.
You can sneak a nap in there. I know we go to my my 8th grade son's game, and I was laughing yesterday as they were in warm-ups, and there's a guy in a Bruce Smith jersey buried in his phone. There's a guy with Cowboys gear on. I had my Packers shirt on, and we're all kind of game tracking and screaming. It just another reminder of the power of the NFL. It does. And got home, watched the Bengals Chiefs game in its entirety. What a game that was. And it's still king. College football, same deal. I mean, I'm through 3 weeks and I'm a little bit tired, but you got to be able to go from noon to whenever Cal and San Diego State got over. I don't even pay attention at that point. I don't even know what time it is most of the time.
I'm struggling, man. Florida State is struggling. I mean, wow. I mean, there's not a planet in which anybody could have picked this. Sam mentioned it during the break. They're under on the season win totals already cashed.
Yeah, and some of it is you made your bed with DJU, Uiagalelei. I can say his last name. I think it's respectful, but they did stop the run against Memphis. They played a good Tigers team, but sometimes this is what you get. Like somebody asked me this morning if Mike Norvell was going to get fired, and I didn't think twice and said no. I mean, they're coming off of 13 in 1 year. So I don't think you fire him. But if they're 1-7 in 5 weeks, get back to me on that.
So that was going to be you kind of spoiled my question, Bill, because with the Mike Norvell thing, I get not, an 0-3 start, whatever. They're the only team in the ACC without a win, whatever. Where does Mike Norvell have to get to, though? Because we've already got the online articles being written about, this is how much money the boosters would have to put up to buy him out and so on and so forth. When do we get to a point where it becomes serious for Florida State about making a coaching change?
Well, who are you going to hire? Exactly. I guess is the question. And you're in a state where your problems aren't even the worst problems right now. The worst problems are probably down the road in Gainesville, where Florida fell to 1-2, and it's pretty much a given or an assumption that Billy Napier is going to get fired, and it's just a matter of when. So I think they would need to reevaluate some things in recruiting. When you use the transfer portal as much as some of these guys do, and I know the trendy crown is Portal King, well, what happens when the Portal King doesn't work out? And that's kind of what's going on at Florida State this year.
I think it's interesting when we talk about this kind of new era of college football, and obviously the DJU, who, we all remember his story. It feels like it was 5 years ago at this point that his career kind of began in college football. But with regard to that transfer portal and how it's kind of reshaped the sport in the 12-team playoff, do you kind of think, Bill, that we're in for more changes year over year, or is it kind of one big change that we saw and now it's all just gonna kind of keep playing out the way that we've seen it this year?
It's hit or miss. I mean, the portal's not going anywhere. Guys are going to transfer. Guys are going to want to transfer. And the two reasons now are NIL. And it always comes down to playing time. In order to make more NIL, you probably got to play more. So you have to be visible. And I think quarterbacks in particular, that's going to continue to happen. When you have that many transfer quarterbacks, for as much as we're banging on DJU right now, look at Cam Ward at Miami. He's a potential program saver. He's in the Heisman running. He's thrown for more than 300 yards in 3 straight games. Miami looks like the team to beat in the ACC because they hit it. I kind of call it portal roulette. I think I've done that on this show 100 times, but you just don't know where that, and it really is that, right? Red or black, good or bad. That's where it can kind of land.
What did you make of Georgia and obviously gutting one out against Kentucky?
Well, Mark Stoops should probably just go for it on 4th and 8. I mean, I don't understand why they punted there. And I get it. I understand being in a coach's shoes. You make that kind of value judgment. Man, we might not hit this 4th and 8. Maybe we get the ball back. But you're Kentucky, they're Georgia. Georgia had 1 touchdown all night. This was your chance to go win, because I think we're talking about that punt more than the game where Kentucky actually stood up to them for 4th quarters. If they win that game, we don't even care about South Carolina the week before. The way that they beat Kentucky, and Kentucky being 1-2. That would have been a signature victory for Mark Stoops, arguably his best victory since being there. So I was a little shocked that they decided to punt.
We've got some Boston College to get to. I don't want to spoil it because Sam's got some stuff to ask you about with regards to Boston College. So we'll do that coming up in the next segment. I only got a second here, Bill, and then we'll hold you for one more. Notre Dame, if they win out, could you still see them being a playoff team?
But the beauty pageant matters. They have to beat everybody soundly like they did to Purdue this week, and there will still be a chance.
All right, Bill Bender is hanging out with us, the Sporting News. He does a great job on college football. He knows a little bit about the NFL, too, so we might pick his brain on that as well. Boston College, Sam's got some thoughts to get to on that. A couple other questions around the college football universe in week 3 of the college football schedule. Lots more to do. Sports Wrap continues on this Monday. Halfway home on this Monday edition of Sports Wrap. Did a ton of NFL. Now we're doing some college football with our friend Bill Bender. Does a terrific job. The Sporting News. After week 3 of the college football season. Talked about Florida State, obviously out of the ACC. Sam wants to give some love to Boston College. I think he's an adopted Bostonian or something. Go ahead.
I'm not. I'm definitely not. It's more curiosity, Jason. And Bill, I got to get your take on this. Obviously, we'll go from the basement of the ACC to near the top. And the Syracuse thing has been wild, too. We can talk about that later. But Boston College this season, 2-1. They cover against Missouri over the weekend in a game where they looked pretty good. Is Boston College for real, Bill?
Yeah, I think so in terms of the ACC. Thomas Castellanos, the dual threat, high efficiency, one of the top passers in the conference. And their loss to Missouri wasn't unexpected, but I thought they would hang in that game. They run the football well. Bill O'Brien, for whatever your opinion of him is as an NFL coach or an offensive coordinator, I think he's an outstanding college football coach. He proved that at Penn State when they were in the situation that they were in. Now he's at Boston College, a place that perennial 6-6, 7-5 type team. They could win the ACC. They could at least play for it. I don't know that they could beat Miami or Clemson, but I think they could get to the ACC championship game depending on how it breaks.
There's going to be listen, with this expanded playoff, there's going to be a lot of teams in this thing. If the designed intention of this is for us to get late in the season, much like baseball did, where you've got a ton of teams still in the mix late in the year. If that's the idea here, college football is going to be very happy late in the season.
And two teams I'm watching this weekend, to your point, that could break the establishment of we get brainwashed into saying Georgia, Alabama, or Ohio State will win it every year. Mm-hmm. There's two teams I'm watching this weekend. One, Tennessee. Can they go down to Oklahoma with this offense that 700 yards? My wife went to Kent State, by the way. She wore a Kent State shirt. I told her, she goes, what's the score? I said, it's 65-0 at half. And then she walked out of the room. And USC at the Big House. Are the Trojans that team in their Big Ten debut? I'm fairly certain they're going to win the game, but how do they win the game? Is it because of USC, or is it just because Michigan can't figure out quarterback right now and lost 13 guys to the NFL? Very intrigued by both of those teams to see if they can be the teams to shake this playoff up.
Bill, let me ask you something really quick, because you mentioned that Tennessee-Kent State game. What did you make of the onside kick with Tennessee up 30?
They're out for blood. Josh Heupel has an offensive machine. I think Nico Iamaleava is really good, but it's the running game. Watch these quarterbacks. We talked about Georgia in the last segment. How did Carson Beck look when he didn't have a running game behind him? Not that great, right? Nico's had a strong running game all season. If Oklahoma loads up and stops that, we'll find out what he's really about. Kent State wasn't going to do that. By the way, who made Kent State's schedule? They go to Penn State this week. The Nittany Lions are coming off a bye week and looked bad against Bowling Green, so we know they're not going to look bad against the poor Golden Flashes.
What'd you learn from Arch Manning this weekend?
Oh, he's great. I'm really struggling, really struggling not to overreact. Because
I can tell you just jumped all over that. He's great.
Number one pick in 2 years. That's what I think. I think I watched a Manning that can move. And his decision, it was UTSA, and I'll try to bring it back a little bit, but throwing the ball down the field, making good decisions, going to get his first start. And I'm wondering, Texas doesn't really have a problem here until Oklahoma, if Quinn Ewers' injury is lingering, because when they play the Sooners, that's when, if Quinn is there and he's rusty, you're going to start to hear, why isn't Arch in? They play Mississippi State and UL Monroe the next 2 weeks. It is fun. He's fun, though. It is fun to have a Manning back on the TV that isn't doing like a Manning cast, actually on the field.
Bill, what NFL team is looking at Shedeur Sanders, after that game, not being gracious in victory against Colorado State? What teams are looking at him and going, oh, yeah, I want that guy leading my franchise? I mean, I don't care how talented he is. There is something that is not connected properly in him. I cannot take the top of the draft pick and gamble my entire franchise future if I'm a GM on somebody who still, to me, doesn't seem like he has the maturity to handle playing the position and running a team. I
was talking to somebody at Grant's game yesterday. My son, he just came out and said, and as you guys know, I'm in Central Ohio. He goes, "What are we going to do when the Browns draft Shedeur Sanders?" And I could not stop laughing because I was like, that isn't that the perfect storm right there. You get rid of Deshaun and then you bring in Shedeur. They've done this before. And I think the biggest regret they have right now in Cleveland isn't necessarily about Deshaun Watson. It's about watching Baker Mayfield go 2-0 with Tampa Bay with what looks like what could be a very real NFC contender. And yeah, but that would be one of the teams. What he's doing right now is raising these questions. It's really risky. It's like the last 3 weeks we've had a Shedeur Sanders that has had to do with everything but his arm talent, the way he recognizes the field. Just shake the hand. It's so easy. Who cares what they say before the game? Just shake his hand.
Be the bigger person.
Correct.
Bill,
45 seconds. Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on Baker. You mentioned him. Obviously, you've seen him play for a long time, from Oklahoma to Cleveland to around the NFL. What do you think is making him so successful in Tampa Bay?
Well, Mike Evans helps. And I think just the maturity of he's been in the league for a little bit now. You'll see that with Justin Fields on a smaller scale. You'll see that with some of these quarterbacks. Hopefully you'll see it with Bryce Young in a few years. But I think he got out of a situation, came into another one, went through the ringer, and I'm happy for Baker Mayfield and what he's doing in Tampa Bay.
I'm with you on that. Bill Bender, the Sporting News. Check his work out there. He does great work. Bill, always appreciate it. We'll see you back here next week.
Hey, no problem. Thank you.
Something to consider is next. All right, Odds and Ends wraps it up in 10 minutes. First, something to consider, Sam Yarnell. Protecting Tua Tagovailoa from Tua Tagovailoa. We don't need to protect him from guys hitting him around the league. We need to protect him from him. You undoubtedly have seen the news by now that Tua has no plans to retire. He's already made up his mind on that. So why are you even bother going to see concussion specialists? Why are you even bother going to see neurologists if he's already made up his mind? Either one of two things is happening here. Either the reporting isn't true, which I have a hard time believing when it's, guys like Adam Schefter reporting it, who are reputable guys in this industry. Or he's really so headstrong and so firm in his belief that he's got to see this through that he's going to put his life at risk. I mean, because that's kind of the point we're at. And I was thinking about this on Friday, and I didn't get to mention it. I did a brief thing at the end of the weekend edition of SportsWrap. And at the end, what I wanted to say is, Tua Tagovailoa is about to become the premier case study for concussions post the concussion movie, now knowing what we know about concussions. He is going to become the ultimate test subject, I believe, in this generation for what happens to guys who suffer a ton of concussions the way he has with his career at Alabama and now in the NFL. He's going to be that guy that's under the spotlight every day of his life, not just now, but when his career is over, to see what the effects are of all this head trauma, Sam. And I keep asking the question, who is going to protect him from him? You have a league that is capable of stepping in, and I don't know if there is a more emerging case of somebody where the league may have to protect Tua Tagovailoa from himself.
So with regard to, that's an interesting thought, and just playing it out in my head, just there at the end, the league doing something. The league couldn't. So this would get so political. The Players Association wouldn't let the league do anything because they wouldn't want the governing body to act on one of their union members. So the union would have to try and do something. But then if the NFLPA tried to tell him that he shouldn't play anymore, the league would step in because the owner of the Dolphins would be like, wait. I just said I was going to pay this guy $250 million. You can't just tell him to retire. It would be a political mess. At the end of the day, this is obviously a very tricky situation. I am not going to choose to believe even Tua in that he will play again until the second he takes a step between the white lines. I think that there are so many things at play. I think for even him to think that he has already made up his mind is foolish, because he's going to hear something tomorrow that will make him go back on that thought. And I know that there are very close friends of his, former professional football players, former NFL players, in his ear, by his side, telling him that he's got to start to get real about this kind of thing. So I think that
Antonio Pierce came out last week and even openly said, like, you got to think about the rest of your life.
And that's the thing. He, Jason, in his head, could be saying what Adam Schefter is reporting, that he is steadfast on playing in the NFL again. But I think that until he puts those pads on, buckles up that helmet, and steps between the white lines, there are so many things that could affect that decision and change it at a moment's notice.
Move away from the Tua news, because obviously there's going to be another shoe to drop in that story. We didn't talk about it in the opening segment, or in the first two segments where we talked about the NFL, where we got into the Chiefs and obviously their big win. But they suffer a huge loss now with Isaac Pacheco going out. And I don't know where they go. I mean, if he's lost, you're talking about a fracture. You could be talking about the whole season. I don't know where they're going to replace the output that they get from that position right now, and obviously what he means to that team.
Yeah, so Samaj Pirine is on, I don't know if he's on their practice squad right now or if he's on their active roster, but he is obviously an option for them to go to at running back. Not a great one, no question about it. We've seen him be semi-successful on playoff teams at times, but those weren't dynastic Kansas City Chiefs caliber teams. That said, it's the Kansas City offense effect, right? This team took in an old Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and they made something out of it. They even at some point made something out of Kadarius Toney, which still to this day is incredibly impressive. I trust them. Oh, and let's not forget Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or I guess we should say the corpse of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, is on the physically unable to perform list. So week 5, they'll be able to activate him. He just has to miss the first 4 weeks of the season. So 2 weeks, really, the Chiefs have to kind of figure something out at running back. And they did sign someone, Carson Steele, drafted him late, He's rookie. So there could be some potential there. He looked really good in the preseason.
But the reality is, we're mentioning all these different guys. None of them amount to what Pacheco gives them.
No.
I mean, as much as we like to talk about the reality and the possibilities of a three-peat, and they will have time to try and sort of massage this situation and figure out what combination of guys works best as they go through the schedule, it's a huge loss for this team. There's just no getting around that.
It is, Jason. At the end of the day, though, I think that this is one of the most criminally underrated parts about the Kansas City Chiefs. Their offensive line is amazing. Whoever is running behind that offensive line is going to get you chunk yardage at points.
We'll see how they handle it and where they go in terms of trying to find some help and sign somebody off the street. Odds and Ends wraps up the show. Everything that wasn't football. It's next. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Monday. Don't forget, if you miss anything from the show during the week, SportsWrap with Jason Page podcast is available for your podcasting needs. Go and check it out. Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, a whole bunch more. All right, Sam Yarnell, without any further delay, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Aaron Judge is back. Boom, baby. The big grand slam the other night for the Yankees in a win over the Red Sox. Another home run this weekend. So Judge is back. Maybe still a shot to get to 60. We'll have to see.
Let me ask you something really quick.
Well, the Orioles are just falling apart, though.
Let me ask you something on the Yankees.
Yeah, please.
If they don't win... Okay, let me phrase it differently. Mm-hmm. How far does Aaron Boone have to go in the playoffs to maintain his job for next year?
I'm convinced he has naked pictures of the Steinbrenners and Brian Cashman. I don't think he's going anywhere. If they haven't gotten rid of him by now,
Really?
yeah, I don't think they're getting rid of him.
Wild card loss, he's out. He's not out.
I'll
Wild
believe
card
it when I
loss,
see.
he's
I'll
back.
believe it when I see it. I don't think. Yes, I do not believe that the Yankees want to part ways with him. But there is something. He's got some spell over them between him and Brian Cashman. You know, the two of them. I just don't see the Yankees breaking it up. I don't. I think if you get rid of one, you'd have to get rid of the other. To be quite honest,
you're right. You're probably right.
And I don't think they're ready to get rid of both of those guys. I just don't see it.
I think if they don't make the ALCS, there's a real. We gotta get real here.
They're gonna win that division, by the way. They're gonna win. They're gonna win that division. By the way, we have not mentioned this. The Detroit Tigers have put on one hell of a push here towards the end of the season. And I don't know if they're going to get in or not. They do finish the season with 6 games at home, including the last 3 against the White Sox, who by that point will be in the tank. Those guys will probably be drunk by first pitch by the time we get to the final weekend of the Major League Baseball season.
Whoa.
Yeah.
The White Sox are heating up, Jason.
Stop it.
They
won 2 in
just
a row.
ended their streak of 20 straight series losses. Don't sleep on the White Sox.
Yeah. I think the White Sox are sleeping on the White Sox at this point. Orioles now 3 back of the Yankees, by the way, in the AL East. So the Yankees' chances, obviously, of winning that division look really good. But, man, hats off to the Tigers. Just 3 back of the Twins for that final wild card spot. The problem is they don't play the Twins again this year.
And how about the AL Central? Guaranteed to be a 3 playoff team division. I shouldn't say that, not guaranteed. But Seattle is not creeping into that wild card spot. I'm sorry to our listeners and viewers on Root Sports. It's just, it hasn't gone your way this year. It's really unfortunate. I loved the Mariners this year.
Too.
Just didn't work out.
No.
The AL Central is going to have 3 playoff teams. That's really cool for a division that, 2 years ago, as recently as 2 years ago, we thought of as the basement of the American League.
Yeah. By the way, also on KONG there in Seattle. Love you guys up there. Asia Wilson goes over 1,000 points. First WNBA player to do it in a season. All the while, Caitlin Clark continues breaking records, doing that from a scoring standpoint for a rookie. It's got to be Asia Wilson for the MVP, though. There's no scenario at this point that exists where anybody other than Asia Wilson is the MVP.
Nope, none, not at all, not a chance. Asia Wilson is the best player in the WNBA. She will get the MVP award. We've talked about it on this show quite literally for months at this point. She was a minus money favorite coming into the season, and with good reason. She's been dominant through the WNBA season, the Olympics as well. Asia Wilson is the best women's basketball player on earth right now.
Yep, certainly is. NASCAR, Watkins Glen yesterday. Chris Buescher, your winner, beats out the road course specialist, Shane Van Gisbergen. Like that? I actually was able to say his name properly. So the NASCAR postseason continues. And if you did not get to see it this weekend, I didn't watch it on TV. I just kept getting videos because I live in Las Vegas now. I was getting videos left and right from the UFC event at the Sphere, which, you want to talk about resetting sort of what sporting events could look like. And I don't know what kinds of things they can put in there because of the way it's all set up. And it's really set up for music. And they were able to put the octagon sort of near where the stage would be. I don't know what other kind of sports events could wind up being there. Maybe WWE could do something there at some point. But what we saw with what UFC did, and everybody who watches the show knows, I'm critical of Dana White for some of the ways he's handled himself, outside the octagon and outside the purview of the actual fighting within UFC. The event they put on at the Sphere, honoring Mexican heritage and all of that stuff, just out of this world. If you have not had a chance to see the highlights, go and find them online. It is very much worth it. An all-world event for them this weekend at the Sphere.
It seems like whenever anyone goes to this venue, and don't get me wrong, it was a really cool event. Obviously, a really interesting fight with Shigashawn losing to Dvalishvili, the who is a weird. Just quick betting note on that. Dvalishvili was like plus 146 the entire week, moved to minus 110 day of the fight. Very hairy, but great event. The Sphere continues to be the most popular venue in the country.
Yeah, it really is. We'll see what they have up their sleeve next. That's going to do it for us. Thanks to Bill Bender. Thanks to you, Sam. We'll see you back here tomorrow.